About 5 years ago, I lived downtown in a major city in the US. I've always been a night person, so I would often find myself bored after my roommate, who was decidedly not a night person, went to sleep. To pass the time, I used to go for long walks and spend the time thinking. I spent 4 years like that, walking alone at night, and never once had a reason to feel afraid. I always used to joke with my roommate that even the drug dealers in the city were polite. But all of that changed in just a few minutes of one evening. It was a Wednesday, somewhere between 1 and 2 in the morning, and I was walking near a police patrol park quite a ways from my apartment. It was a quiet night, even for a weeknight, with very little traffic and almost no one on foot. The park, as it was most nights, was completely empty. I turned down a short side street in order to loop back to my apartment, when I first noticed him. At the far end of the street, on my side, was the silhouette of a man, dancing. It was a strange dance, similar to a waltz, but he finished each box with an odd forward stride. I guess you could say he was dance walking, headed straight for me. Deciding he was probably drunk, I stepped as close as I could to the road to give him the majority of the sidewalk to pass me by. The closer he got, the more I realised how gracefully he was moving. He was very tall and lanky, and wearing an old suit. He danced closer still, until I could make out his face. His eyes were open wide and wild, head tilted back slightly, looking off at the sky. His mouth was formed in a painfully wide cartoon of a smile. Between the eyes and the smile, I decided to cross the street before he danced any closer. I took my eyes off him to cross the empty street. As I reached the other side, I glanced back, and then stopped, dead in my tracks. He had stopped dancing, and was standing with one foot in the street, perfectly parallel to me. He was facing me, but still looking skyward, smile still wide on his lips. I was completely and utterly unnerved by this. I started walking again, but kept my eyes on the man. He didn't move. Once I'd put about half a block between us, I turned away from him for a moment to watch the sidewalk in front of me. The street and sidewalk ahead of me were still completely empty. Still unnerved, I looked back to where he'd been standing, to find him gone. For the briefest of moments, I felt relieved, until I noticed him. He had crossed the street and was now slightly crouched down. I couldn't tell for sure due to the distance and the shadows, but I was certain he was facing me. I'd looked away from him for no more than 10 seconds, so it was clear he had moved fast. I was so shocked that I stood there for some time, staring at him. And then he started moving towards me again. He took giant, exaggerated tiptoed steps, as if he were a cartoon character sneaking up on someone. Except he was moving very, very quickly. I'd like to say at this point I ran away or pulled out my pepper spray or my cell phone or anything at all. But I didn't. I just stood there, completely frozen, as the smiling man crept towards me. And then he stopped again, about a car length away from me, still smiling his smile, still looking to the sky. When I finally found my voice, I blurted out the first thing that came to mind. What I meant to ask was, "What do you want?" in an angry, commanding tone. But what came out was a whimper. What? Regardless of whether or not humans can smell fear, they can certainly hear it. I heard it in my own voice, and that only made me more afraid. But he didn't react to it at all. He just stood there, smiling. And then, after what seemed like forever, he turned around, very slowly, and started dance walking away, just like that. Not wanting to turn my back to him again, I just watched him go until he was far enough away to almost be out of sight. And then I realised something. He wasn't moving away anymore, nor was he dancing. I watched in horror as the distant shape of him grew larger and larger. He was coming back my way, and this time, he was running. I ran too, I ran until I was off the side road and back onto a better lit road with sparse traffic. Looking behind me then, he was nowhere to be found. The rest of the way home, I kept glancing over my shoulder, always expecting to see his stupid smile, but he was never there. I lived in that city for 6 months after that night, and I never went out for another walk. There was something about his face that always haunted me. He didn't look drunk, he didn't look high. He looked completely and utterly insane, and that's a very, very scary thing to see.
It was a dark and stormy night, and Sarah was walking home alone from her waitressing job. She'd taken the shortcut through the park to get home quicker, but now she wished she'd taken the longer, safer route instead. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She quickened her pace, and that's when she saw him. The man was tall and thin, with a stretched-out smile that seemed frozen on his face. He wore a suit and tie, but there was something off about the way he moved. It was almost like he was dancing, or contorting his body in strange ways. As she got closer, she realized with mounting horror that he was watching her too, his eyes locked onto hers. Sarah wanted to turn and run, but something held her back. It was as if she was rooted to the spot. The smiling man was closing in on her, faster and faster. With every step he took, Sarah's panic grew until it was almost unbearable. At last, the man stopped just inches from her face and spoke. "Together we dance," he said in a voice like silk. "Won't you dance with me?" Sarah tried to scream, but no sound came out. She tried to run, but she was still frozen in place. All she could do was watch in horror as the smiling man beckoned her to dance with him. Just as Sarah was about to succumb to the terror that gripped her, a voice from behind called out, slicing through the tension like a bolt of lightning. "Sarah, wait." Turning her head with relief, she saw her friend Emma rushing towards her. Emma was small and dainty, an unlikely hero in this sinister scenario. But her presence alone seemed to break whatever hold the smiling man had over Sarah. Shaking off her paralysis, Sarah stumbled backward, putting some distance between herself and the chilling stranger. What is happening?" gasped Sarah, searching desperately for answers. Emma glanced at the menacing figure still looming close by, his unnaturally wide grin stretching further. "I don't know, but we need to get out of here." As if responding to their exchange, the storm intensified, rain pouring down in torrents. The wind howled through the trees, creating an eerie chorus that matched the dread coiling inside them. Sarah noticed that the smiling man's laughter blended seamlessly with the cacophony surrounding them. Dragging Sarah away from the scene, Emma led her towards an alleyway adjacent to the park. With each step, they felt invisible eyes piercing their backs, making it clear that the smiling man was tracking their every movement. Pushing forward against the tempestuous elements, they sought solace in the shelter of an abandoned building half covered in ivy. Once inside, the two girls leaned against the cold, decaying wall, their heavy breaths punctuating the growing silence. Their hearts pounded in unison, mirroring their shared fear. Sarah clung to Emma, grateful for her presence amidst the encroaching darkness. As minutes ticked by, the world outside grew quieter, haunted only by the faint echo of dripping water. They exchanged worried glances, questioning whether the smiling man had retreated or merely masked his intentions. It was then that they heard the sound. A soft scratching noise coming from the door at the far end of the room. Emma signaled Sarah to stay put, stepping forward cautiously. She peered through a crack in the warped wooden barricade, covering the entrance, and saw nothing but the silhouette of an abandoned street outside. Convinced that it was safe for now, she slowly unlatched the door and swung it open. Just as they were about To breathe a collective sigh of relief, two figures burst into the room. Julian, Emma's older brother, and Callie, their mutual friend known for her resourcefulness and courage. Both were drenched from the rain and wore faces etched with anxiety mirrored by Sarah and Emma. Julian hastily closed the door behind them, blocking out any potential threats lingering beyond. "Thank goodness we found you," Julian panted, his hands trembling slightly. "We've been searching all over for you. What's happening? Why is that man after us?" Sarah implored. "We don't know exactly," answered Callie, scanning the room intently as if expecting danger to emerge from the shadows. "But this smiling man, he's not like anything I've ever encountered before. He doesn't seem human. We have to stick together, make sure none of us fall victim to him." The gravity of their situation settled heavily upon them. They huddled closer, the anxiety emanating from each member of their group palpable in the confined space. The room seemed to shrink around them, amplifying their fear while unhindered silence haunted their every breath. Days turned into nights, merging seamlessly within the walls of their sanctuary. Their existence boiled down to brief control excursions to scavenge for sustenance or news, always wary of lurking dangers. Time became elusive in the midst of mounting dread, its passage marked only by deepening shadows on crumbling walls. Eventually, whispers began circulating among the group, carried by the wind's cruel whispers outside. Faint rumors of others falling prey to the smiling man, their whereabouts unknown, created an air of grim realization that they were not alone in this terrifying dance. Those who ventured outside disappeared, swallowed whole by darkness. With each passing night, despite their attempts to fortify themselves against the encroaching terror, the walls seemed to close in further. Sanity teetered on a precipice as exhaustion clawed at them, eroding their resilience like sand worn smooth by waves. They needed a plan, a glimmer of hope amidst the suffocating despair. One evening, when the sun had just slipped below the horizon, Callie emerged from her clandestine research with excitement etched across her face. "I think I found something. A way to break free from this nightmare." The group gathered around her, clinging to her words like lifelines, desperate for a semblance of salvation. "I've been studying ancient texts and folklore," Callie explained, her fingers tracing diagrams drawn long ago. "There is mention of an artifact known as the Amulet of Shadows. It is said to possess immense power over supernatural entities, capable of shielding those who bear it from harm." Sarah felt curiosity mingle with trepidation. Julian chimed in, his voice trembling. "But where can we find this amulet? And even if we do find it, how can we be sure it will work against the smiling man?" Callie nodded solemnly. "I have reason to believe that the amulet is hidden within a crypt located deep within the forest surrounding our town. Legend has it that only those who are pure of heart and possess unwavering courage can unlock its power." In unspoken agreement, they knew what had to be done. The group prepared themselves for the treacherous journey ahead, gathering supplies and mustering their dwindling strength. As they set foot on the path leading into the darkened woods, an unsettling presence seemed to hover around them. The trees whispered ancient secrets while a cold breeze chilled their bones, as if warning them of the imminent danger awaiting their arrival. Days turned into weeks as they traversed through the dense forest, each step filled with unease. The smiling man's influence grew stronger with every passing mile, his presence pulsating through the very fabric of the wilderness, infecting their thoughts with paranoia. Finally, after countless nights spent under the watchful eyes of moonlit branches, they stumbled upon a decrepit cemetery shrouded by mist. Tombstones stood like sentinels, marking the resting places of the fallen, their names obscured by time. At the center of the graveyard, a mausoleum loomed, covered in ivy and cloaked in darkness. A chill ran down their spines as they approached cautiously, knowing that whatever lay within could hold both the key to their salvation and the gateway to their demise. With trembling hands, Callie reached into her backpack and produced a worn leather journal she had discovered during her research. Its cracked pages contained instructions and incantations necessary to access the amulet. Sarah studied the verses intently, her certainty waning slightly but her determination resolute. Together, they began the intricate ritual described within the journal. Words that had not been uttered for centuries spilled from their lips, an ancient language long forgotten but still potent in its power. Shadows danced around them, whispering secrets of forgotten realms as if assisting them on their quest. The air grew heavy with anticipation as Callie recited the final line of the incantation. Silence engulfed the group briefly before a sudden gust of wind rattled the tombstones and tore through the ivy-clad mausoleum. A door creaked open, revealing a pitch-black staircase leading into unknown depths. With a shared breath, they descended into the crypt, heartbeats pounding against their chests like drums. The darkness seemed to absorb every shred of light, leaving them blind except for the faint glow emanating from Julian's flashlight. Nervous whispers filled the stone chamber as they explored the catacombs, searching for any sign of the amulet. The walls dripped with mustiness, echoing their anxious footsteps while something unseen lurked just beyond the shadows. Suddenly, Sarah let out a gasp, her eyes fixated on an ornate pedestal at the far end of the room. Time stood still as they approached it cautiously, hearts pounding with expectation. Resting proudly upon the pedestal was the Amulet of Shadows, an exquisite creation crafted from ebony, adorned with shimmering gemstones that seemed to contain entire galaxies within their depths. As they gazed at its mesmerizing beauty, hope swelled within their weary souls. Sarah, trembling with excitement and apprehension, reached towards the amulet, her fingers an inch away from brushing against its cold surface. But before she could touch it, a haunting laughter filled the crypt, freezing them in place. The smiling man emerged from the shadows, his presence suffocating the very air around them. His grin stretched impossibly wide, revealing rows upon rows of gleaming teeth. His laughter echoed through the chamber, growing louder and more deranged with every passing second. Fear threatened to engulf them completely, but their determination held steadfast. They had come too far to let terror undo everything they had worked for. The smiling man took a step forward, his eyes glinting with malevolence. Quote, "You thought you could escape me? You thought your pitiful attempts at finding this amulet would save you?" He taunted, his voice slicing through the silence like a knife. Sarah's hand trembled as she clutched the amulet tightly, her resolve hardening. "We won't allow you to haunt us any longer," she spat defiantly. With those words, Sarah placed the amulet around her neck, feeling an immediate surge of power coursing through her veins. The smile on the man's face faltered ever so slightly, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his features. The group watched in awe as the air distorted around Sarah, a protective shield forming around her. The eerie glow emanating from the amulet grew brighter, repelling the darkness that surrounded them. The smiling man let out a roar of frustration, lunging towards Sarah with outstretched arms. But she was prepared. With a swift movement, Sarah unleashed her newfound powers, sending a blast of energy towards the smiling man. He screamed in agony as the force flung him against the wall, shattering it upon impact. But just when they thought it was over, something unexpected happened. The shattered pieces of the wall began to reform, taking shape until another figure emerged from within. It was another smiling man, identical to the one they had just defeated. The group's hearts sank as their worst fear became reality. There were more than one of these horrifying creatures. They realized that this nightmare was far from over, and their fight for survival had only just begun. With each passing moment, more smiling men emerged from the shadows, surrounding them with their twisted grins. Their laughter echoed through the room, causing an unsettling chill to crawl up their spines. Sarah's grip on the amulet tightened as she rallied her courage. She could feel its power pulsating within her, urging her to keep fighting. With determination blazing in her eyes, she led her friends into battle against the horde of smiling men. They fought valiantly, utilizing every weapon, spell, and ounce of strength they possessed. But no matter how many smiling men they defeated, more continued to appear, relentless and unyielding. As hours turned into an eternity, fatigue settled into their bones, draining their energy and hope. The smiles on the monsters' faces widened with sadistic pleasure, feeding off their fear and despair. Just when all seemed lost, an unfamiliar voice broke through the chaos. Enough. A figure stood at the entrance, radiating an aura of pure power. It was a witch, her eyes ablaze with fiery determination. She raised her hands high, summoning magic unlike anything they had ever witnessed before. Bolts of lightning crackled across the room, striking down the smiling men one by one, disintegrating them into nothingness. The witch's power was overwhelming, obliterating the smiling men and their twisted existence. The room was filled with cries of agony, slowly fading away until only silence remained. As the last remnants of the smiling men vanished, a sense of relief washed over the exhausted group. They stared at the witch in awe and gratitude, aware that they owed her their lives. But as they turned to express their gratitude, she was gone without a trace, leaving behind only the lingering scent of magic and mystery. They knew not how she came to be, nor where she went, but they were forever grateful for her timely intervention. With the menace defeated, Sarah removed the amulet from around her neck and handed it to another member of the group. She knew that its power should never fall into the wrong hands again. And together, they vowed to protect it, to ensure that the smiling man would never haunt anyone else ever again. And so, the horrifying tale of the smiling man came to an end, buried deep within the memories of those who had dared to face him. But the legacy of their bravery lived on, a testament to the strength of friendship, resilience, and the undying fight against evil.
At any time or place, we bless that right across your face.